the Chicago Bulls started their 4-game West Coast road trip with a win over the Sacramento Kings. A win that was thrilling and exciting, and the Bulls had a comeback victory down from 22 points. We're going to talk about how the finish to this season over the last 20 games is really going to affect or change the plans that the front office has for this team. We're going to talk about that. Plus, we're going to look at how Coby White and DeMar DeRozan are leading the league in more than just minutes played per game. And we're going to preview tonight's game against the Utah Jazz. All that plus a little bit of the mailbag right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go and get into this content for today. And so first up, I want to talk about how me and Pat over on Locked on Bulls talked about, like, is winning actually going to hurt the Chicago Bulls in a way as far as standing pat? I want to kind of take part of that conversation here and kind of flesh it out a little bit more, right? And more so talk about whether winning or losing is how the finish to the season will really change or maybe direct what the Chicago Bulls do this offseason in kind of changing the roster. And so, we got to set up some things, right? We got to set up the things that are going to happen regardless, right? And so one of those things is that a rebuild is not coming. I know a lot of Bulls fans are still hoping, calling for a rebuild. AK has told us a full blow-up of this roster is not coming. Now, we could, in a way, see kind of a pseudo-rebuild or a major retool with this roster when you look at the decisions that have to be made about Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan and his pending free agency. I think if you lose one or both of those players, that signifies a drastic change to the direction of your roster in a lot of ways that, that's still more of a retool than a rebuild. But pay attention to what happens with those two guys. Now, I have my own personal opinions. I do think that Zach LaVine is going to be difficult to move unless you're just moving him to move him this offseason. But if you want something back of value, right, in pieces that can actually help your team win, which is what we heard that the Bulls are focused on leading up into the trade deadline. Unless they've pivoted from that, I do think that, finding deals that help the Bulls while also sending out Zach LaVine is kind of unlikely. I've seen a lot of you guys also in the comment section say things like, well, maybe the Bulls will move Zach LaVine in a deal that you're gonna kind of salary dump him. Well, there would be only, I think, 2 or 3 teams that can signify a salary dump for Zach LaVine. Now, there are some other teams that will have cap space to where they can absorb a large part of Zach LaVine's contract to where you don't necessarily have to take the same amount of contract back. But again, it really comes down to how those teams value Zach LaVine, right? How they really look at, what adding Zach LaVine does to them and what they're willing to give up. A lot of teams that are probably going to be interested in Zach are going to be teams that, maybe go farther in the playoffs, right? And have, see like, hey, we got eliminated in the second round. Maybe we need a little bit more of that scoring punch, right? So, there's situations and scenarios in which the Bulls could potentially move Zach LaVine. I'm not going to say that it's a completely impossibility coming up into this offseason, but I do think that it's going to be not as likely as what some Bulls fans think, depending upon the Bulls just trying to move Zach LaVine. So we'll end up seeing what happens with that. If it does come to pass, we'll see. But overall, Zach LaVine piece is definitely a piece that you have to watch, and DeMar DeRozan, what's going to happen with those two guys. Now, outside of that, also Lonzo. I think Lonzo's contract, whether the Bulls see it for what it is or not, that Lonzo is probably not going to be healthy. And even if he is cleared to play basketball, at what level is he going to impact? If one of the first big decisions that the Chicago Bulls are probably going to have to make this offseason is what to do with Lonzo Ball and his contract. Do they file for that career-ending injury exception if he's not ready to go? Because that adds roughly $20 million back on your books, back on your books for you to maybe retain some players, right? Make some more move, have some more flexibility in the free agent market, right? So yeah, that's something to watch out for as well. Now, I don't want to get back into this whole Lonzo Ball conversation, but I do want to say that there is a realistic possibility that Lonzo is just not ready to go by this season. And if he's not, considering he has 1 year left on his deal, the Bulls really have to look at that and ask themselves okay, this is what it is now, right? Lonzo's not walking through that door for the Chicago Bulls. And if he's not walking through that door, does that mean that we have to put our team in the best situation to try to add something to it? So that's something to look at and see as well. Again, we'll see what happens with that one. Teams with a lot of cap space, again, when you look at it, the Philadelphia 76ers, Detroit Pistons, Orlando Magic, and Utah Jazz are the teams slated to have the most cap space next year. So that's something to also look out for if the Bulls do try to do a salary dump or, whatever with Lonzo Ball's contract. So keep in mind for that. The next one is the Andre Drummond decision that needs to be made. Andre Drummond has played on the league minimum for the past 4 years of his NBA career. League minimum for 4 years in a row. And when you look at Andre Drummond, over the 29 games since the end of December, Andre Drummond has averaged 11.3 rebounds and 10.9 points, and he's doing that on 21 minutes per game. Also, he's adding a block per game with that. If Andre Drummond goes back to the open market, the chances that he is going to take the league minimum again is probably unlikely. And to Andre Drummond's credit, he deserves to be paid more. How he's able to impact the game in the limited minutes that he gets, especially for the Chicago Bulls team. So those are all pending player decisions that we have to look at that could, in of itself, really reshape the Chicago Bulls roster. If you lose any combination of Zach, DeMar, Lonzo, Andre Drummond, and we're not even mentioning Alex Caruso, who teams could become very aggressive about getting, and maybe the Bulls do get those 2 first-round picks that they clamored for Alex Caruso if they were to move him. Any combination, you move 2 to 3 of those 5 players that we just named, that is a major retool to the roster in of itself, right? And then you have the roster and what the next kind of wave of your roster is telling you. The players, the young players on this team, and Kobe, Ayo, Julian Phillips, Dalen Terry, Patrick Williams, even when Patrick Williams is playing well, right, and healthy, and then you still got, Ernolapa team. These players have shown they play better with a faster pace. And the front office has to ask themselves is, we talked about coming into this season, right? AK, Billy Donovan talked about wanting to play at that faster pace. It really hasn't happened. The Bulls are still 26th, I believe, in pace per game in the NBA. And as your roster gets younger, and especially you're adding a first-round pick, theoretically, this offseason as well, those young players typically perform better at playing at a faster pace. You also have Coby White, who's leading the league in clutch assists per game, again, showing that he doesn't always have to do it scoring, but his growth as a passer as well, and how creative him, Dalen Terry, and others get in transition. Do you want to change your roster in a way that it's better suited to play faster more regularly and thus getting kind of more out of what your players can do? That's going to be some things that this front office all has to look at. But then you have to look at the negative side of it. The Bulls right now have played better in the clutch, and it's not even by a small margin. The Bulls have been a considerably better clutch team in the NBA this past season, and because of that, you got to look at that and still say to yourself, all right, if we're going to be better in the clutch, if that's truly something that the Bulls are, they're better in the clutch. When you look at it right now, clutch stats, the Bulls have the 11th best offensive rating. They have the 2nd best defensive rating. We have the 3rd best net rating overall. The only teams with better net ratings than the Chicago Bulls in clutch moments are the Denver Nuggets and Boston Celtics. Also, we're 6th in assist to turnover ratio. We're 3rd in 3-point shooting percentage in clutch minutes, which is crazy enough considering the Bulls aren't a good 3-point shooting team. And when you look at that, so versus the standard stats, right? So the Bulls are 11th in offensive rating in clutch. We're 22nd in just regulation. We have the 2nd best defensive rating. We have the 6th in clutch. We have the 16th best defensive rating in regular games. Our net rating is 3rd overall in the NBA in clutch scenarios. We are 20th in net rating in just regular stats in the NBA. So the front office could very well look at how the team performs in clutch moments. Again, this is me saying AK's talking points, not points that I would make to keep this team together. But I'm worried that the way that the Bulls perform in the clutch, that does this front office look at this and say, this is reason enough, how we finish the season strong is reason enough to bring in the majority of this roster back on top of the cap limitations that we have with being so close to that luxury tax that we know this Chicago Bulls team is not going to pay. That's what it comes down to. And I think overall it's going to come down as well to the results in the play-in. The Bulls right now are all but set to have the 9th seed in the Eastern Conference in that play-in scenario. Like, the Bulls can go on a historic losing stretch, and that could happen. Right now, the Bulls still hold that 2-game advantage over the Atlanta Hawks. We also hold a 4.5 game advantage over the Brooklyn Nets and the Toronto Raptors that are the two teams right outside that play-in scenario. More than likely, the Bulls are making the play-in, right? And we're coming in at the 9th seed versus the 10th seed last year. And then when you also look at it, the fact that we have an overall better net rating, like I said, in those clutch moments, things like that, if the Bulls do make it out that play-in tournament, win those two play-in games, and go into the playoffs as the 8th seed, I worry that then the front office is going to look at that, hang their hat on that competitiveness that they talked about before, and we're going to see minuscule changes made to that roster. And maybe that's the right thing. I'm not here to say what's the right way or not, but maybe that's the right thing to do if you do see a team that, with all the injuries that they had, were still able to make it out the play-in tournament. Maybe that is the right move then for the front office to look at it and say, we're going to keep DeMar. We're gonna have these young players that are going to hopefully develop, spend a season with offseason with Peter Patton, develop more, and then we'll see what we got next year. We're going to add a first-round pick to that as well. And maybe that's the best thing. I think that is still some concerns, and I think Bulls fans hearing that if this team is going to run it back again, it's going to have some big questions, but we'll see. Let me know what you guys think, how it kind of laid everything out. Do you think that the Bulls are more or less likely to run everything back next offseason, or do you think they're going to look at it and say, hey, no, man, we need some serious changes to this roster to just make it better right now? The Bulls are slated to have the 11th most, or can have the 11th most cap space in the NBA next season with $16 million. But again, that's not taking into consideration re-signing Patrick Williams, re-signing DeMar DeRozan. The Bulls are going to be right up to that luxury tax, again, unless that Lonzo Ball career-ending injury exception happens. But let me know what you guys think, man. How concerned are you that despite the wins, which I want to see my team win, but despite those wins, if this team finishes the season strong, will that just increase the chances of this front office running it back yet again? But with that said, I want to talk about two players that have helped the Bulls win some of these games, or a lot of these games. It's Coby White and DeMar DeRozan. When you look at it, yes, they lead. They're number 1 and number 2 in minutes played in the NBA. But then when you kind of look at it further than that, DeMar DeRozan is number 1 in clutch points scored at 32 points since the All-Star break. Coby White is second right behind him with 25 points scored since the All-Star break. And I talked about it before. When you look at it as well, Coby White is leading the league in assists. He's the number 1 assist man in clutch minutes when you look at it. And that's for the season. That's not just for since the All-Star break. In clutch moments, right? Coby White has the plus minus of plus 87. He is the leading player as far as plus minus in the NBA in clutch scenarios. The only player closest to him is Derek White, who is 12 points below him, and then Michael Porter Jr., which is at 69. Coby White has 87. Michael Porter Jr., Nikola Vucevic, and DeMar DeRozan round out the top 5 in plus minus as far as minutes players per game. And so DeMar and Coby are leading the league in those clutch scenarios, and that is part of why you see the Bulls play better in clutch situations. It's because of Coby White. It's because of DeMar DeRozan. It's because of the way that these guys play. Coby White is only one of 6 NBA players this season to get 35 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 5 threes on 70% shooting from the field. The only other players in that category, Luka Doncic, Steph Curry, Jalen Brunson, Paolo Banchero, and Brandon Ingram. And so, these two players have had such an important impact for the Chicago Bulls. And, the talk with Coby White's slump of him winning Most Improved Player of the Year has kind of gone away. But Coby was actually asked about that after they got off the plane in Utah. And Coby said this: "It would mean a lot to me, just to show the progress I've made and to set the example to the younger guys around the NBA that people can count you out and say what they want about you. But as long as you stay true to who you are, keep working and stay humble throughout, things can come your way." I think everybody develops at their own pace. Some guys come in and are already super talented, like Luka, Trae Young, and those guys come in and impact the game instantly. I feel like everybody has their own story, their own journey, and run through their own race. I feel like my race was different than everybody else's. I want to continue to provide an example that I'm in year 5 and still continuing to get better. I feel like in the NBA, if you're a lottery pick or high pick in the first round, you're not an all-star in the first 2 years, then you're a bust. That's how I feel like everyone looks at it in today's NBA. But I wanted to get better and stay on the right track. We've talked about so much how the growth of Coby White is important to this team and how he's developing as a leader, and that is the important part of this. I talk about Coby White, I talk about DeMar, how they're leading the NBA in the clutch. And I think more important than any of that, we are seeing a player that is growing into a leader and a piece that you can build around. Can he be a number 1 on the championship team? He hasn't shown that capability. There's so much more that you would have to show to even be in that conversation. But what Coby White has shown is that you can't count out a player's development. And I talk about that so much here is that we, as Bulls fans, because this is the fan base I'm a part of, I don't care what any other teams do. As a fan base overall, we are so ready to write the story and make a determination on who a player is and who they can be if they don't hit what we think their development should be by a certain amount of time. Coby White is bucking that trend. And shout out to Coby White for showing that. Shout out to Coby White for coming into the season. And I do think Coby still has a chance to win Most Improved Player of the Year. But the way that he's going to have to do that, he's going to have to finish out these last 20 games extremely, extremely strong. And let's see if Coby White can do it. And one of the games he can do it in is tonight against the Utah Jazz. With the Utah Jazz are coming in with a bunch of players missing that are key rotation players to them. Lauri Markkanen, Walker Kessler, Keontae George, all out. Lauri and Keontae George starters for that team. Walker Kessler, even though he comes off the bench, plays a big role for that team. He's one of the lead leaders in block shots per game. He's averaging almost 3 blocks per game at 2.7. But still, even without that, you still got to look at the Utah Jazz for what they are. This is a potent offense. They're terrible defensively, which we'll talk about in a second, but they are still averaging the 9th most points per game in the NBA at 117. Now, missing Lauri Markkanen, missing Keontae George is definitely going to impact that. You can't say that they won't, right? But this Utah Jazz team still has more than enough firepower of players that can do that. Now, they're going to be missing 35 points on average between Lauri, who averages 23, and Keontae George, who averages 12 points per game. But you still got Colin Sexton, who can absolutely fill it up and has killed the Bulls before. Jordan Clarkson, who's having a down year, but is still leading that team in assists, and he's third most scoring on that team as well at 17 points per game. You still got John Collins. You got THT, who's averaging double figures. This team is still a team that the Bulls cannot overlook because of the way that they operate on the offensive end of the ball and how they spread that out. Remember the time that Ochai Agbaji killed us? So you cannot overlook this team because the Bulls have let role players go off on them several times before. So the Bulls have to be prepared for that. They're also the 3rd best rebounding team in the league. Now, again, missing Keontae George, missing Walker Kessler is definitely going to affect that. But you still want to try to snuff this team out on the boards where you can. Lauri averages 8.3 rebounds per game, but John Collins leads that team in 8.5. He will still be in this game, so you got to look out for that. Walker Kessler's his 3rd leading rebound, so he's going to be out. So, the Bulls have to watch out for that. Kelly Olynyk is still he's not on the team anymore, so we'll see what happens with Kelly Olynyk. But, so the Bulls have to watch out for this team and how they perform against this Utah Jazz team. They have to rebound the ball well, play that solid defense. They're missing their leading scorer. So again, how do you perform now defensively is going to be a big thing. And how does, with this team missing so much of their depth up front, how does Andre Drummond absolutely cook this team? Because I do think Andre Drummond is going to be part of that as well. Now, the Utah Jazz are also a terrible defensive team. 26th in the league, averaging, allowing 120 points per game, and they allow for the opponents to have the 6th lowest rebounds in the league. So the Bulls have to attack those two things. This is a game where I do think the Bulls have more than enough firepower in both those areas. They just have to perform it. And let's see if the Bulls can do it. Now, with that said, we got 2 voicemails I want to play today. But before we get into that, we got to get into this message from our sponsor, and that's Aura. I'm sure most of you know anyone can find anything on the internet, including your full legal name and personal email, your home address, phone number, and even your relatives. For me, personally, I never took this kind of stuff seriously, that people can take my personal data and use it for their own financial gain. Well, in 2019, I got my identity stolen, including my social security number and credit card information, and it was a total nightmare getting it all sorted out. From recouping loans that were taken out in my name and shopping sprees on my credit card, there are some really bad people out there, and it's sad to say, but it's true. Do a Google search for your personal information or someone you know and see if a people search site shows up. The information is easily accessible because of data brokers who profit by selling your information to robocallers, telemarketers, spammers, and anyone else that wants to learn more about you. And so for me, protecting my and my family's personal data and information is at the utmost importance because of the terrible experience I had 4 years ago. That's why I'm excited to tell you about today's sponsor, Aura. Aura will identify data brokers that are exposing your information and automatically submit opt-out requests on your behalf. They will even opt out of junk mail and telemarketing lists. Aura also monitors your emails and passwords to see if they're involved in any data breach and exposed on the dark web. Aura's app also features VPN password manager, real-time credit card and identity theft monitoring, internet parental controls, and protects your device from malware. Aura has almost every internet safety tool you'll ever need, all inside one app, which is what makes it so amazing, so that you don't have to use multiple platforms and sites to protect yourself. Let Aura do the hard work, keeping you safe online. And if you sign up right now, Aura will give you a 2-week free trial with my link below. You'll be shocked at how much your private information Aura finds exposed over 2 weeks. I was shocked at how much my information Aura was able to find when I was using the app. Go to aura.com/CBC to start your free trial. Also linked in the description, or you can scan the QR code here. Now back to the video. All right, so let's get into the first voicemail for today. This one's from Big O. Let's go ahead and play that now.
What's going on, Brother Haize? It's Big O, man. I know you don't like my double voicemails, but just to finish my thought real quick on AK, on the frustrations that I have with AK, particularly, with games like last night. Those are the games where would make me not want to just do anything. You know what I mean? Like, watching last night, watching Kobe go out there and fight Io, DeMar DeRozan getting into it with Bobby Portis, Vooch being frustrated. It kind of brought me back to one of my favorite movies, Marvel Endgame. If you remember, when Thanos, it looked like Cap and Thor and Iron Man was defeated. You know what I mean? Like, when Thanos brought his army and all you heard was I don't know if it was Spider-Man or who it was coming out the background before I can't think of the guy name who runs with what's his name, Doctor Strange before he opened up the rings and shit to get everybody to come from the different universe back into where Captain was. Like that is what that reminded me of. Except DeMar and Vooch and Ayo and Kobe didn't have nobody to come from a different universe, or just be able to come off the bench and be able to help those guys in that fight when they needed it. You know what I'm saying? Nobody was there, and that's all on AK. The team is just not good enough, dude. And I understand, like, it's an emotional game. You can't just go out there and make decisions, based off emotions. But in the summertime, they'll make emotional decisions. Those are well thought out decisions. But at the same time, they ain't good enough. And you got to go out there and get guys and go get these other main characters, these other A-list Marvel characters to come in and help when it comes to the big fight. You know what I mean? So this is where I get frustrated at. And I usually, for this entire season, I can honestly say I've been even keeled. I have not been caring as much. I know this team's going to be bad, so I have not been putting a lot of emotion when it comes to losses. But a game like last night, it brought it out of me. I was fucking pissed off just off the simple fact of how the Bulls got bullied and there was nothing they could do about it talent-wise. So appreciate you, Haize.
Frustrations over, and this so clearly was left after the Milwaukee Bucks game. Now, you went, most of your voicemail was, did you really just give a recap of Endgame? Is that what you did? And it was Falcon who came on the intercom and said, come on, bro, that is one of the greatest cinematic moments in history. Come on, Big O, you disappointed me there, not knowing who got on the intercoms before everybody started coming through the Doctor Strange portals. I'm mad disappointed in you, big bro. Come on, Big O. You got to get it together, man. If you're going to, I'm a nerd. If you're going to talk about Endgame here, man, make sure you get those quotes right. But here's the thing. I agree with your frustrations on AK. I think everybody sees that, right? We've seen the holes that this roster has had for years. And this front office has said that they've seen it, right? They've talked about it, but haven't done enough to really kind of fill those holes. And so let's hope. Now, again, I understand having a $20 million contract in Lonzo that you can't do nothing with. We had about $20 million in exceptions we could have used that we didn't because ownership doesn't want to allow us to go into the luxury tax. So that's a lot of money there that's just sitting wasted. On top of now, you have injuries with Zach LaVine, who your highest paid player is out with injury, only playing under 30 games this season, right? Torrey Craig. So all those things have definitely played a part. But when you don't have and kind of go more aggressively at filling up some of the limitations of your roster, they become more evident every year. And that's what we've seen with the Chicago Bulls team. So I completely agree with you with that, we need that edge. We need that identity. And let's hope that the Chicago Bulls can find it. But great voicemail, despite the lack of MCU knowledge. Great voicemail there from Big O. Let's go ahead and get into this next one. This one's from Shay.
Hey, look, Haize, I've paid attention to the offense over this whole season, and I've come to the conclusion the reason why we like are so inconsistent. Not only do we not get out on fast breaks and run and get out, especially when we have turnovers, but one of the main people that we forget and we go away from is kind of like the Toronto Raptors did years ago with Valanciunas. We go away from Nikola Vucevic. Now, look, I know Vuce has not had the best season this year, whatever, but I feel like if we establish him early and, like, keep him in the game engaged, especially when he has a hot hand, that would create a lot more easier shots for Coby White and DeMar DeRozan. Now, look, I know what people are going to say, oh, Vooch is slow in the post, whatever, but it's like, if he gets it going inside, he's going to have to get doubled. And Vooch is such a great passer to the point where it could lead to easy shots for Coby White and DeMar DeRozan. Now, look, I know that a lot of people may not agree with me, but from what I see, I feel like we don't recognize the hot hand. And then when DeMar and Coby are the hot hands, they just continue to jack up shots even when they're being doubled. I feel like we have to do a little bit better job of recognizing the hot hand and give the ball to Nikola Vucevic a little bit more often. That way the offense could be much more smooth. But that's just me. Anyway, tell me what you think. Peace.
All right, so I know that you are the biggest Vooch fan, and I don't even mean that as a slight. Nikola Vucevic is having a down year. It just is what it is. Now, it's not as bad as what some Bulls fans will make it out to be. It's not as good as what some Vucevic supporters will let it out to be. But it has to do with the season that Nikola Vucevic has happened. Yes, in December, we did facilitate. At times where we went to Vooch to facilitate, we were having more success. Now, that was a team that was moving without the ball. Patrick Williams was in there. And for some reason, we went away from moving without the ball like we did during that stretch. So I'm not saying that Vooch can't still be impactful with having him be more facilitated, right? But he hasn't been the hot hand in a while. Now, that is the limitation of Billy Donovan overall, is not riding the hot hand and not feeding your big man early. But I do think that Vooch has to show and prove that. And over the last couple of games, early when the Bulls have gone to him, he has played better, right? Now, that hasn't stayed up throughout the game. That's on his level of play and Billy Donovan not going to him. But I think overall it'd be remiss not acknowledge the season that Nikola Vucevic is having. I had the episode in it. He's having one of the worst, a historically bad shooting season. He just is. And so, you know, some of that is roster. Some of that is where he has to get his points and where he has to score because of the makeup of this roster. And I do think that if it changes, I'm not saying that we should change it to make it better for Vooch, but I'm saying if this makeup of the roster changes where we add some more three-point shooting at times, things like that, I think that if it changes the way that we want it to, Vooch can have a bounce-back season in a way next year, but he's also on a decline. And that naturally happens with big men at this age that Nikola Vucevic is. They start declining. Now, I'm not saying that he has completely fallen off to where he can't be impactful. 17 and 11 is still impactful, right? But he has to be more effective in how he gets his points, and I think that would definitely help the Bulls. And yeah, you can definitely use Vooch to facilitate a little bit more when your shooters are actually shooting the ball well and playing out on that perimeter well. And let's hope that the Bulls can go to that. Great voicemail there from Shay. But that's my time today, guys. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end everything on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See Red if you can, and I'll see you guys tonight for game night. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.